Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I'm really looking forward to my conversation today with Rachel Haley. She is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Clarus Designs. She's based out of the Bay Area, San Francisco, and really excited to talk about her career path, what led her into entrepreneurship, the world of entrepreneurship. So welcome to the show today, Rachel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's dive in. As we always do, we're telling the story behind the entrepreneur. So take us back where you were originally from. Talk a bit about some of the educational choices you made and your early career, please.
Absolutely. So I always tell the story in a way that I explain, I kind of fell into my current role as a co-founder and CEO of a business. That wasn't something that I necessarily, when I graduated high school or even college, thought this is exactly what I want to do. And I have a path and it's going to be linear and I'm going to take these steps. So I sort of kind of stumbled my way into it, fell into it, and then really accelerated from there. So I
want to pause on that a little bit because I don't usually hear this from people, right? Like,
interesting.
I just fell into entrepreneurship. No, it's really interesting. Did you have any entrepreneurs in your family? Any sort of background in business entrepreneurship?
Not really. My dad is a doctor and he has his own medical practice. So he did run his own business. So I sort of saw that growing up. I would work in his office and file paperwork and do things like that for him every now and again. So I sort of saw how he ran his office, but it wasn't necessarily like he had this new idea that no one was doing and he wanted to go out on his own and build a business, so to speak. I mean, it was very much, he was working with a group of medical doctors and then decided to have his own practice. So that was pretty much the only exposure I got to it. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to ask because it's interesting. I have a lot of conversations with a lot of entrepreneurs and I don't often hear, I just kind of fell into it. So that's great.
Oh, yeah. I know. I'm probably a bit different and unique in that way. I'm from Reno, Nevada. Originally, I grew up there. I grew up closer to northern Nevada around Lake Tahoe. So loved being outdoors, water skiing, snow skiing, hiking, swimming. I grew up as a competitive swimmer and played water polo. So I basically love the outdoors. I went to school in the Bay Area. So I went to Santa Clara University, which is not too far from where our company is headquartered in San Francisco. I studied economics and finance with a mathematics minor. So I originally thought that I was going to work for the Federal Reserve Board. Like that was actually my plan. I wanted to get a PhD in either mathematics or economics. And that was what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was just going to be someone in academia for a big part of my 20s and then either work for the Federal Reserve Board or potentially teach. But I really thought I was going to have a career in academia. And then when I went to college, I think a lot of that changed. Santa Clara is a pretty business-oriented university. And so I ended up taking a few finance classes and really enjoyed that. And so then got a major in that. And then after college, I ended up working at a finance institution called Hall Capital Partners. So it's an asset management firm in San Francisco. They work with institutions, endowments, and high net worth individuals. And it was super interesting. I got a really good exposure of capital markets, overall money management, and the financial system in general, right out of college. So that was nice. But what I realized when I was there was that a lot of the action, or I would say energy and buzz, the excitement and really the value that you were getting from a lot of these portfolios and the return on your investment was from, entrepreneurs who had these great ideas and were able to grow businesses and teams from that. So I saw a few IPOs during my time there. I saw some really good, interesting, I should say, acquisitions, some high value acquisitions. So I saw the Instagram acquisition happen. That was insane to watch, and the IRRs that people's portfolios were observing. So I thought, wow, this is really actually where I want to be. I want to be in the startup world, boots on the ground, really doing things and building out a company. So about, 2 years after college, I worked at Hall Capital for a little over two and a half years or so. I had an idea to start a company, a wedding planning application, actually, which was so interesting because I had never been married at that point in time, but it looked like an interesting thing that was ripe for disruption. And so, normally the career path after you work at one of these financial institutions is to go into private equity, venture capitalism, or every so often you work at a hedge fund.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go to VC companies for associate roles as an applicant and interview. And then during the meetings, I would actually pitch them on my idea, which was called Weddily. Yeah. And it was very interesting, sort of a Trojan horse move. They were very actually impressed. I think that they were impressed that I had the audacity to do that. And then also kind of slightly confused. It was always,
that's awesome.
Are you here for an interview or are you getting funding?
Rachel, I love that so much. That is absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, well, it just sort of happened because I brought the deck that I had. I built a pitch deck for Weddily, and it was just me at the time. I was a single founder, a single person, and I only had experience in finance, right? And then college before that. So really nothing. And I didn't have a technical background. So it was pretty audacious looking back. But when they would ask me, because it's the same questions, right? There's a technical portion, like walk me through an LBO, walk me through a DCF, walk me through all these finance things. And then there's more of the cultural fit and the career trajectory. And everyone's question is always, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, well, actually, so
you're like, actually, let me tell you why I'm really here.
Yeah, I was like, Weddily is the future of wedding planning. I was like, this is actually why I'm here. And
oh my gosh.
They were quite entertained. And I think, and the feedback, because I interviewed at several places, didn't end up working at any of them. And the feedback from every single one of them, after the shock wore off and they were able to really engage, it was the same talk track, which was, we are impressed with your ambition. However, we are concerned that, you don't have any technical skills and you don't actually have any operations skills either. And you're a single co-founder. So here's our suggestion to you. Here's our advice. We think you should gain some technical skills if you can, or find a technical co-founder. In addition, find yourself an opportunity to get operational experience. Since you don't have a technical background, you're going to be the one who's running the business, and good ideas will fail for poor execution and lack of operational efficiency. So find a way to get that experience as well. And then if you can, find a co-founder, because single founders, there's a lot lower success rate for them in the companies that we're looking to fund, right? And this is like B2B SaaS companies in Silicon Valley area. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do just that. And one day I'll be back and I'll be knocking on your door for funding, and hopefully I can answer all of those things and say yes to everything that you suggested.
That's great.
Yeah. So I ended up working at Salesforce. This is where I wanted to get more operational experience. So I was in a role in the finance department. And in that role, I was actually able to oversee how the business operated at, like a 50,000 foot level. So was really fortunate to have the opportunity to work with two CFOs that they had there, Mark Hawkins and Graham Smith, and work directly with them in terms of how the business was operating day to day, how we were doing from a budget perspective, how we were doing with our quarterly guidance and earnings calls, and what was working well, what wasn't working well, where we were efficient, where we were inefficient. And so that was great. And I got a big bird's eye view, which was fantastic to see how larger, successful public tech companies operate at scale. I didn't have any technical skills though, still. So I figured, okay, well, Salesforce is quite a sticky product. You know, their churn is very, very low, especially considering how large of a company they are. So I figured I should probably learn what makes this platform so great and flexible and why people love it so much. And from an operations and finance perspective, you don't actually work in the product itself too often at Salesforce. So it was a great opportunity for me. They offer free classes for employees to actually learn how to build customized, customized applications on the Force.com platform. So I learned Apex, which is the language that Salesforce is written in. I learned how to use the product. I learned how to customize it. And then I also learned Python and SQL to ensure that I had scripting language and could do data analysis whenever I came to that. So I started doing that just sort of in my spare time and really found it interesting. So after a while, I would just reach out to my colleagues who had left Salesforce and now we're at small startups and said, hey, if you need help doing anything in Salesforce, let me do it for you. Like I'm learning, I'm excited. And so pretty soon people just started asking me questions like, hey, we were trying to do this thing. Can you help us with this thing? And I thought, oh yeah, I just learned that thing. Let me do it for free. And awesome. So that's sort of how I built a network of people who were asking me questions specifically with CRM technical setup. And then a colleague of mine from college, his name is Greg Daly. He and I had a few classes together and we're good, very close friends. He was setting up a business intelligence department team, so to speak, at a company called AdRoll. At the same time I was doing this. And then he was getting similar questions like, in his own area of expertise, such as if I have $1, do I invest it in marketing or sales? Or what's the average time for a sales rep to ramp? Or where do we expand internationally and why? Or which marketing channel is the most effective, et cetera. And so we came together and we're like, we should just charge for these skills or this free service that we're giving out currently. And that's how Clarus Designs, our consulting company, was born. And that was 6 years ago.
Wow. And
so, yeah, that is how I sort of fell into, I should say, entrepreneurship. I knew that I wanted to do it after I got out of college, but it was a bit of a longer road. And then, at Clarus, I actually took some time off to go back and work for startups directly. So the feedback that I would get all the time when we were just starting out, and this was the end of 2015, was, this is a great solution for X problem that we're solving. However, have you actually ever implemented this at a company yourself? We appreciate this from an academic perspective. However, does this actually work? Have you actually seen it? The empirical experience is always worth more than the idea. And my answer was always no, because I had only worked at Salesforce and Hall Capital Partners before that. So my plan was to work at least one fast growing rocket ship of a company to really get that experience that you don't get from just consulting. You see a lot of what doesn't work, but you're somewhat of a Navy SEAL team and you just parachute in and you fix a bunch of things and hopefully your solutions are sustainable, or at least they have a useful life of a year or two. And then you quickly extract yourself and let the company continue to run. And you don't really get to see the company grow and expand and reach new milestones and new hurdles and new problems. Yeah. So that was always my overall plan. And I wanted to get experience working at a tech company and then come back to my consulting business to really help grow it even faster. And so, yeah, I worked for a company called Snowflake. I started there in 2017. One of my colleagues that I worked with before was running the corporate sales team. And he said, hey, if you want to get experience, working in the seat, the rocket ship, front lines, understanding how to build an operations team and what it takes to really scale, I'm telling you, this company is it. And so that was a great opportunity. I started there as an individual contributor. And then with my boss at the time, her name is Rhonda Larson. She's a fantastic mentor of mine. She and I built the team to around, 50 people. And at one point, around 30 people reported to me. And it was crazy. It was crazy growth. I went from 200 employees when I started there to over 4,000 when I left last year. And they went public in September.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, Rachel, you might be the most well-rounded person I know. You have so much amazing
Thank you.
experience. That's awesome. I love that you just dove right into that. So let's talk about Clarus. Just, exactly what the company does. I mean, it looks like you guys have scaled significantly since you started the business. Just talk about more of the work that the company is doing.
Sure. So Clarus Designs is a sales operations consulting, or as I like to call it, sales operations as a service company. So we really help small startup companies, mainly tech, B2B, SaaS companies, anywhere from like 1 million to 50 million in revenue, and 5 sales reps to like 100 scale, and build out their sales operations, either systems, processes, or overall strategy. So there are these key inflection points that companies will reach, such as, going from 1 million to 5 to 15, and 15 to 45 or 50, that have common pitfalls from an operational or technical perspective. And we really help companies work through those pitfalls or challenges and help them scale. Also, we help smaller companies that don't actually have resources to fund a full operations team. And we do a lot of that work for them as like an outsource or consulting partner. So that's our main service. That's our bread and butter. But we also have 2 other revenue arms. So we have an outsourcing division. So we employ over 100 people in the Philippines. And these people actually offload a lot of the tactical data entry and administrative work that sales teams get tasked with, which they never really love doing. And it really prevents them from spending a lot of time talking to customers. So we have a team there that allows your sales team to offload these manual administrative type tasks to our team, and we project manage the whole process to allow the sales teams to spend more time speaking with customers. So that's actually been able to grow significantly over the last 18 months, which I'm super excited about. And then recently, we also just launched a product in February, so just a month ago. And this is a product that sits in Salesforce and helps automate a lot of the data issues that we see in an everyday with our normal clientele. It helps to automatically clean them. So it surfaces them and then automatically cleans them so you don't have to go through a manual process.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Wow. Where do I begin here? Okay. So I love that you are employing an army in the Philippines. I don't have an army myself, but I also outsource a lot of what we do over to the Philippines as well. And just the nicest people on the planet. I went early in 2019 and went and spent a few weeks there and working with my team there, people I'd never met face to face. And it was so much fun. Just such incredible opportunity for startups to scale and get support that they need. So I love that you're doing that. According to LinkedIn, you have 81 employees. Are a lot of those folks on the contract side of things, or do you have a core team as well that's here in the US?
Oh, that's right. So yeah, we also have a core team of consultants that work directly with the startups in terms of the more technical build and strategic operations. So yeah, we have around 10 people here that are consultants in the United States.
Awesome. Great. Exciting stuff. Do you have any examples, Rachel, that you can speak about? Maybe in the last year or so, it has been an interesting year, right, for all of us. But any clients that you could speak about, you don't have to name names, but projects that you worked on that were particularly interesting for you or the firm?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the big challenges that we saw in 2020 was companies having to shift their processes to adapt to more remote working environments and pretty much preparing themselves for potentially 100% remote work. So there was one company in particular, it was a smaller company, and we worked with them. And that was really interesting because they were just starting out, and they actually were able to hire sales operations and operations employees before ever hiring any sales reps. So that was great because they were coming into the year at a very unique time from an economic perspective, but they had the opportunity to really set everything up correctly before they hired any sales reps. So that was really interesting for us because we could really flesh out with sales leadership and the executive leadership team how we wanted the processes to flow and what we wanted it to look like, and we're able to set it up from a blank slate, which was really nice. I had never done that before. Most of the time what happens is we come to company X and they've been growing and growing and growing, and they grew too fast and then they never really invested in operations. And so now we have to kind of break things down and rebuild it. But to have the opportunity to build something from a blank slate and then anticipate the growth on top of that was really great. And so we set it up in a way that would enable, remote work and remote sales teams and expansion as the company grew. So that was really interesting for us.
That's great. That's awesome. Don't you wish every company would come to you at that stage instead of untangling the mess?
That would make our job so much easier. Yeah, that's sort of my soapbox. I say it's never too early to invest in operations, just because I see so many companies that say, yeah, hindsight's 2020. If we had known, maybe we would have been able to scale even a little bit faster.
Absolutely. That's great. Well, what are you most looking forward to in the business over the upcoming year or so?
It's a great question. I think I'm most excited about continuing to build out our product. So for me, that was a really interesting experience to work with an engineering team and go through product development cycles and launching and the marketing behind it. And there are a lot of opportunities that I failed and learned from. So I'm excited to continue to build the product and hopefully, get at least, 10 to 20 paying customers by the end of the year, and then hopefully scale beyond that and our fiscal year 22.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Rachel, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way would be to go to our website. So if you go to www.clarusdesigns, so CLARUS designs.com, and you go to our contact us page and you fill out a little bit of information on what you're looking for, we'll get back to you relatively quickly and have a conversation to see if this is something that we could help you with.
Perfect. One last question I neglected to ask you. Clarus, the name, what's the meaning behind it? How did you land on that?
Yes, sure. So Clarus in Latin means clarity or clear vision, so to speak. So we thought about the name because every time we were working with companies, this is back in 2015, a lot of the times they really actually didn't know what their goal was. So they had a problem, but no real objective. So that was the first thing we usually did with them, was like, okay, well, what are you trying to do? Like, what are you actually trying to achieve? And then that will help us fix the problem and then also create a solution that is more sustainable and aligns to your long-term and short-term goals. So Clarus is the word that we chose, and then design. So we were thinking of designing the perfect path or vision for your company.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rachel. It's been a fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.